As we start off today's movie, we see Hella, an activist who's getting ready to ambush the electric plant that provides electricity to the aluminium factory. After managing to connect the large wires by shooting an arrow across them, she pulls the conductive string, causing an electric surge. Once she finishes her mission, Hella hurries away from the spot before the local authorities catch her, dismantling her bow on the way. After running for several miles, Hella sees a helicopter heading to the site and hides, and hiding and dodging the helicopters that were after her, she finally makes it to a farm and asks the owner to hide her from the police. When he asks her what she did to be chased by the cops, she explains that she had taken down the power line, and remembering what he had heard on the news, he asks her if she was the same person who had done this 5 times before, which she confirms. After telling him who her family was, Hella explains that what she was doing was for the good of people and wholeheartedly believed that what she was doing was right. When the cops arrived in the helicopter to speak to the farmer, he tells them that he hadn't seen anybody passing by, and taking his truck back into his shed, he uncovers the grass piled behind to reveal Hella hiding there. The old man explains that the officers had followed her track and would bring their bloodhounds next, so she isn't welcome to stay. He then uncovers an old car and offers it to her, telling her to return it when she can. Thanking him for his kindness, Hella drives back to the city, and for the next few days, the news reported the continuous outages as organized sabotage and questioned the factory's manager about the recent loss of products. Wait, hold on. Did you subscribe to our channel? Come on guys, you're here, you're watching the video, help us out by hitting the subscribe button as it really helps out me and my team to make more videos for you guys. And now, let's get back to the recap. After returning home, Hella goes to meet her choir team where she was actually a conductor. Apologizing for being late, Hella begins the rehearsal when right before Baldwin walks in and joins the choir. A few minutes later, she suggests that they all take a break and asks Baldwin to help her get snacks. In her office, Hella asks Baldwin what the helicopters were doing there, and he tells her that they were there to take a look at an accident, explaining that it was something that he didn't know about. Baldwin tells her that she needs to stop because the Americans would be monitoring the place using satellites, and he explains that she had done very well, but if they caught her now, they would silence the whole thing, leaving all their work useless. Telling him that she would think about it, Hella returns to her choir, and after finishing her session with her class, she goes home and relaxes in front of her TV by doing some exercises and flipping through the news of outraged government officials. In the middle of her workout, she receives a call from the adoption agency that she applied to 4 years ago, and the welfare official informs her that they had a 4-year-old girl in need of a home, and telling the person on the other line that she'd be calling back, Hella hangs up the phone. She's shocked by the sudden life-changing news and takes some time for herself in her workroom where she kept all her children's items that she bought back then. The next morning, she heads down to the adoption agency and speaks to the woman in charge of assigning the children. The woman explains to Hella that they need an answer soon so they can find another candidate for the child, and the woman gives Hella a folder with all the information from the Ukrainian Institute, and she then continues to explain that if Hella accepted, she would need to provide a recent criminal record, a bill of health, and a statement stating that she was still single. Giving Hella the file on the little girl that included her pictures, she tells her that the girl was from a small town and had lost her parents during the war. Taking the envelope from the welfare woman, she heads out to the park so she has some time to think about her decision, and looking inside, she sees the sad pictures of the beautiful girl and feels sad about what she had heard. Hella goes on her bike and hurries to the studio where her sister teaches a type of yoga. Finally finished, Asa goes out to meet her sister Hella in the garden, and Hella tells her sister the amazing news and the two embrace, and apparently Asa also had great news and tells Ella that she'll be going to India for 2 years to join the gurus. After getting her sister to agree to sign the custodian agreement for her new child, Hella goes home. She decides that she's gonna tell the whole of Iceland anonymously that only one person was solely responsible for the constant sabotage, and going to an antique store, she steals an old typewriter and uses it to write down her confession. Once the papers were ready, Hella heads to the university and climbs on the roof and throws the hundreds of papers down to the students, preventing anyone from knowing that it was her. As the students read the contents of the paper, the news spreads like wildfire all over the country. The controversial paper was posted all over social media and reached the ears of the Prime Minister. His entourage reads the note out loud, which criticized the adoption of heavy industries in Iceland and called out for change, signed by the Mountain Woman. In her class, Hella decides to give her students a break and then tells them the big news about the adoption corruption, and her class embraces her happily, congratulating her on being a mother. Later, Baldwin and Hella go to her office and discuss the uproar that she created. Baldwin shows her CCTV pictures that had been taken of her although she had been covered up with a scarf. Then he talks about how the Americans and the Israelis were actually involved now and they would turn any rock to find her. Baldwin tells Hella that the Bureau has started an investigation inside the office, assuming that there must be a mole, then begs Hella to stop everything and leave the country. That afternoon, while Hella was cycling home, she feels like the black car behind her was following her, and the feeling persists the next day as she returns home after spending hours swimming with her sister. Inside her house, she finds her TV on, even though she didn't leave it that way. On the news, she sees the Prime Minister announce that the country would not be held hostage by one woman and that every halted project would continue. Angry that they weren't invoking change, Hella comes up with another plan. She heads out at dawn and she goes through her neighbor's fence and to the car that the old farmer had given her. She then breaks into the road administration and steals a large quantity of Semtex and heads to the flower farm and buys dozens of flowers as well as fertilizers and stacks them inside her car. When she gets to the roadblock, the police are prepared after news of the break-in. She gets away by pretending that she was taking the flowers to her cousin and the smell of manure covered the Semtex. Returning the car to the old farmer with thanks, Hella hikes to the power site like always, and after hours of walking, she chooses a site to camp out for the night, and the next day, she gets up early to go to the power line and starts cutting up the wires, and we then see her accidentally slicing her palm open on one of them. After bandaging herself up, she continues her work and puts the bomb on one of the large poles. While lighting up the explosive, she manages to take down the whole grid, and happy with her work, she gathers up her equipment but notices a drone circling her vicinity, alerting the police to her whereabouts. Getting out her mask, she puts it on and then shoots the drone out of the sky and smashes its camera with a rock. Hella then starts to run away from the area to avoid the swarm of cops that would be soon arriving, and while she was hiding in a cave, she finds a dead sheep and uses it to put on herself to trick the people on the helicopter, and after an exhausting journey, she was almost out of energy, but is lucky enough to be found by the old farmer who puts her in the truck with his sheep to get her across the checkpoint. Once they were clear, the old man takes the almost hypothermic woman to one of the hot springs and lets her recover by putting her in the water. Hella recovers from the cold and was allowed to sit in the passenger seat with the farmer who drives her to the city. At the explosion site, investigators do a thorough search of the area and find what looks like a small droplet of blood. Back in the city, Hella was taking a shower while the farmer looks around the house. He hears the doorbell ring and goes to open it, finding Hella's twin sister Asa outside. Explaining where her sister was, he invites her inside but she refuses, telling him that she was only there to drop off children's clothes and explains that she would call her sister later. The following day, the farmer drives Hella to the airport so she can get her new daughter. Then after saying her goodbyes and telling him that she would come to visit him with the young girl, Hella heads inside. Getting her tickets, she walks toward the row of people waiting to be let through, and confused at the unusual line, she asks the woman standing behind her what was going on, and the lady explains that the police were taking DNA samples from everyone going through. Suddenly, it dawns on her that she might have left a drop of blood for the forensic team to find. One of the passengers yells out that the police can stop searching because the investigators on the case have already apprehended the mountain woman, and on TV, Hella watches as her sister is dragged out of her yoga studio and placed inside a van. Shocked by the news, Hella hurries out of the airport and into a cab, and as they drive away, the news announces that the fugitive is known as Hella and gives a description of her looks, and feeling suddenly sick, she asks the driver to stop the car and jumps out to vomit, and while trying to keep her composure, she encounters Juan, a Spanish immigrant who'd been arrested twice because he was assumed to have been the terrorist ruining the power grid. Quietly walking ahead, Hella gets on her knees and buries the picture of her would-be daughter under moss, knowing that what she had done would ruin all the chances of her being a mom. While Hella cries tears of loss, the police around the area and apprehend her, and weeks later, Hella had already been sentenced to prison, and Asa comes to visit her. Seeing her in the secure room for the first time in a while, Asa hugs her sister sister and looks at her to make sure that she's okay, and Asa tells her sister that now she's in prison, she should try to make the best of it and treat it like it's her heaven while Asa goes to Ukraine to take care of the child. Asa explains that there were new papers in the car outside and that she's decided to make Hela's journey her own. Although Hela tries to object, reminding her sister about her journey to India, Asa interjects and tells her that she must trust her, and suddenly the lights in the prison go out and Asa takes off her clothes and puts them on her sister, making her look like herself. As soon as the lights come back on, the guards open the door and explain that they need to stop the visit due to security reasons, and once Asa is taken to her cell after assuming that she's actually Hela hurries out of the prison and goes straight to the airport. After her flight and a long journey by bus, Hela finally makes it to the orphanage, and once she's taken in by the caretaker, she gets a chance to meet the beautiful Nika, her new daughter, and they start to bond over drawing that they do with crayons. On the way to the airport, they find that the flooded roads could not let the bus go through, and they were forced to walk, and as the movie ends, we see a happy Hela carrying her daughter and her luggage across the water while a cultural song plays in the background. I hope you guys enjoyed the recap. Make sure to leave me a like, leave a comment, also subscribe to my channel. I love you guys so much and I promise to see you on my next recap. Bye!